Ole Miss's transfer portal class keeps getting better and better and better and better all the time. And this is going through our August as camp is getting ready to begin. We'll tell you exactly what we mean right after this.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making me Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. And before we get started today, I do want to let you know about our Discord server. It's an opportunity that you can go and you can just chill and you can have a conversation. We have a rather spirited conversation about Joseph Cryer going on as we speak. So join the Discord server, as it's going to be a private server by September 1st. Right now it's open enrollment. We're probably going to do another open enrollment period again, but it is going to shut down August 31st. So stay tuned for that to happen as well. Chris Graves has committed to Ole Miss. He is a four-star player. And this is what On3 had to say. He was rated top 25 in the country by 3 of the 4 scouting service. And whenever you look at his profile, this is what it looks like. Chris Graves is in the top 125 in 3 of the 4 services. He's kind of the outlier is rivals.com. It just kind of is what it is. At least he's a 4-star, I guess, whenever you look at that. But whenever you look at what he can do, you can see he's a very highly rated player. And to get this type of player at cornerback is a really big deal for the Ole Miss Rebels. It just really is. Now, I've heard stories. I don't know where I heard them. I'm not trying to call anybody out, but somebody talked about him getting kicked off the team and all of this going on. Now, that may very well be the case, but I have not found that anywhere. All I have seen is rumors and innuendo. And whenever I talk to somebody that covers Miami sports in depth, and that is his job, he talked about how playing time is the reason this player was left, and then players from South Florida, they don't like to sit around and wait. That is exactly what was told to me. So I don't know if anybody, I don't know if you should believe anything that is said about Chris Graves and what happened at Miami. All that we need to know about what happened down there is that he's transferred. And after he transferred, Miami removed his grant and aid. And whenever you do that, you've made him much more likely to receive a waiver. So that is the reason that Ole Miss fans are more excited about him getting a waiver than even TJ Dudley. But it's a good football player. And I really like that Graves is available to Ole Miss. And if he gets his waiver, this defensive back room has a chance to just get silly. But before we get into that, let's look at what's going on and talk about his highlights a little bit as well. This is a player that's unbelievably athletic. If you ask Brian Smith, he talks about how he got his start at wide receiver and kind of transitioned over. But you look at the ball skills, and he's a natural player with the ball in his hands. And he's, for lack of a better word, a super athlete. Now, if people's wondering about the level of competition that he's playing in the same league that Clearwater Central Catholic, that's Angie Jaffe's school, plays in. Chaminade Madonna, who played for the state championship and also where Braylon Brown went to school. That is the area and the type of competition that happens in this area. And he's in basically the major city private school type thing that they have going on, because in Florida, they've got really weird districts, by the way. They don't divide it up in 1 through 6A like they do in Mississippi. Heck, Mississippi might be 7 now. They do basically urban, suburban, and rural school districts. So if you're an urban school, you play all urban schools. If you're rural schools, you play all rural schools. So that is one way that they keep it up. So it's not a 1A through 7A type thing, even though you might hear that be talked about. It's more like one urban, one suburban, one rural, and then two. Yeah, it's just like that. It's very weird, but I guess it works out for them. And whenever you have as many cities as we have down here in Florida, I guess that would be important, so that you don't end up with, like, I don't know, Sebring High School playing Lakeland, which still could possibly happen, but it makes it less likely that just an absolutely huge high school is going up against a smaller one. And yeah, I mean, we accomplished that same thing in Mississippi, just doing 1A through 6 or 7A. So we'll see exactly what happens. This is, like I said, this is a player that has a ton of ball skills. And using those ball skills, he's going to be able to make plays, and he's going to be very well developed at the cornerback position. Now, if you look at cornerbacks at Ole Miss, if you look at just what they have on the roster now, you have DeAndre Prince and Zamaria Walton, who everybody is looking forward being the primaries going into the season. That's kind of the alpha dogs of that cornerback room. And Ole Miss is kind of 3 deep right now in players that played FBS cornerback this season. Absolutely insane how much talent and depth they have at the moment. But there's a lot of rentals in this class. A lot of players that are coming in for 1 year and they're gone. There's others that are coming in that have more than 1 year. And those players are being built. So almost this can supplement recruiting. I get into arguments all the time, okay, about how Ole Miss recruits. And everybody's like, is Ole Miss going to change the way they recruit? Ole Miss isn't going to change the way they recruit, because this is honestly the way Lane Kiffin recruits. He draws on the board and he draws a red line. If you are above that line, he will recruit you. If you are below that line, he will not. It doesn't matter if you are high school, transfer portal, JUCO, Canadian, foreign football players. If you are above that line and have shown yourself able to be recruited, Lane Kiffin will find you and recruit you. So a lot of the ways that one of these the most talented roster that's happened in my lifetime. And I mean, if you look at it, going over from top to bottom, you have a Gatorade National Player of the Year playing quarterback, backed up by a former Big 12 Freshman of the Year that was a 4-year starter at Oklahoma State, backed up by Walker Howard, a former 5-star commit to LSU, backed up by Austin Simmons, who was a player that reclassified that was in the 2025 class, a top 100 player. The way Lane Kiffin recruits built that room, because in December, all that was there was Jackson Dart. And you're just like, oh my goodness. If you just sit back and think about it, you're like, man, this could be a problem. And he recruits those guys. And then if you look at the running back position, right? You got Quinshon Judkins above the red line. You've got Ulysses Bentley IV, a former American all-conference player, backing him up. You've got a talented young high school freshman named Kedra Cascano that is coming up. If you look at the wide receiver room, you have a superstar in the making that went to the Under Armour All-American game in Aiden Williams, a high school recruit. Then you have Trey Harris and Zachary Franklin, 2 all-conference USA, all-conference players that have transferred in. You have players that were already on the roster, but you're demanding that they compete for the job. Seniority just doesn't give you the job. Same thing on the offensive line. Same thing on the defensive line. Every position roster building is fully underway for this team, and the talent level is completely off the charts. Now, people talking about high school recruiting and all that. The reason you're going to hear about Ole Miss needs to do this is because this is the way it was done until 5 years ago. People enjoy the prospect of signing day and everything that it meant whenever you could kind of do hope to move forward. But what I need you to understand, if Ole Miss tries to recruit the same way that Alabama does, that Georgia does, that even LSU does, Ole Miss will lose. And Ole Miss has been losing for the better part of 40 years in recruiting in those battles. So what Ole Miss has to do is find a way to make their own little niche that they can dominate, that they can be at the forefront of. Now, whenever Ole Miss recruits transfer players, there are going to be some people that talk about, hey, if a transfer player doesn't work out, it could be down. And I understand that. So Ole Miss is going to have to deal with ebbs and flows as being a kind of a yo-yo team of up and down. Now, I don't think the floor will ever be like 6-6 or below if they do this, but you might have a year that's 7-5 and the next year is 11-1. And it goes up and down and is kind of unpredictable. And this is the roller coaster that we need to live on, and we need to learn to be happy with it. Because if we go and try and do things exactly how other schools do them that have more money, more resources, Ole Miss is going to lose 90% of those battles. But in this transfer portal, the amount of money that Ole Miss has in its collective, it's a super collective. It's one of the most ambitious collectives in the country. If you want to look at what they're doing, Ole Miss can get a top 10 class in the transfer portal right now and have been. The portal king is a thing because of that. But they could only get like a top 25, top 30 class in the high school recruiting. Just because it's an ambitious collective doesn't mean it's an overly wealthy one. We're not Texas A&M all of a sudden just because we have really good ideas. Walker Jones was on our show talking about Ole Miss's need to make $1 spend like $3. And they're always trying to do things that advances them. So we will see exactly what happens, okay? Chris Graves, great player. He fits the mold of that Florida-style defensive back that everybody's thought of for years. A super athletic guy. Like I said, I don't know if you can talk. I've heard rumors that he got kicked off the team. I cannot find that information. And usually when a player gets kicked off the team, you find that information. So rumors are going to be out of why he is transferring. Brian Smith says it's simply due to playing time. South Florida kids do not want to wait their turn. And now Chris Graves is at Ole Miss and he can't transfer again. He's here for 4 years. So we'll see exactly what happens. He is going to need a waiver because he entered the portal a little bit later than normal. Now, I do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. And for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is the perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know exactly how your part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, or more likely Ole Miss every day. It's a lifestyle. Am I right? So we try to have a little bit of fun. Anyway, join our Discord server. We talked about that in the first segment. It is growing up to nearly 150 members at the moment. We're going to stop open enrollment by the end of August. So I do want to let you know a little bit of news as we're getting ready for camp. I think the first practice is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But Quinshon Judkins has been named to the Maxwell Award list. And that's a big deal. Ole Miss does have a Maxwell Award winner in its history with Eli Manning, who won it in 2003, when she honestly should have won the Heisman Trophy that year. But that's another story altogether. But Quinshon is on this list. Now, whether or not he wins it, I do not know. But it's one of those situations that he deserves to be on this watch list before the season. Watch lists have been coming out pretty consistently for months at this point, and we'll see exactly how that goes for Quinshon this season. I think he's going to have a little bit of help this year. I think Jackson Dart's going to be better. I think the wide receivers are going to be better. I think the tight ends are going to be better. And if the other running backs, Kedrick Criscano and Ulysses Bentley, can stay healthy and take a little wear and tear off of him, that is interesting. Now, another thing I want to talk about that's kind of interesting, it looks like Ole Miss is kind of leaning into the red this year, and I've seen people talking about it online that Ole Miss always leans into the red or something about before the seasons, but this is a graphic, and I am absolutely positive this graphic would have been in powder blue last season. He would have been wearing a powder blue jersey. The words would have been in powder blue. Everything have done that, and they've even brought that and incorporated it into the graphic. Really good look as they change over and kind of get modern with the times. Now, does this mean that Ole Miss football is going to go to more red during the season? Are we going to get that uniform more than one or two times during the season this year? Because over the last couple of years, since Lane Kiffin got to Ole Miss, it's been navy blue and powder blue over and over again, and you would have red every now and then. I think Ole Miss wore red against Tulane. I think Ole Miss wore red one other time that I can remember. I think they wore like their great powder blue kits last year against Central Arkansas. That tells you where they sit on the priority scale. They are much more a blue-centric team than a red-centric team. If anything, Lane Kiffin is the opposite of Tommy Tuberville when it comes to uniform choices. If you remember when Tommy Tuberville got the Ole Miss job, he just refused to wear blue. He wore it one time, and that was a road game in Baton Rouge. Otherwise, he wore red. That was just his thing, to wear red over and over again. And at the loss of the blue jersey, which we all missed, every bit of us missed. After once Cut got here, the blue jerseys kind of returned, and we're all able to get happy about it. Now, Lane Kiffin's the opposite way. It's either blue or powder blue pretty consistently. The red jerseys, the most you see red essentially in games that matter are in the white jerseys as the numbers and the stripes. That is the extent of red kind of in the Ole Miss uniform scheme. And now maybe this year it's going to change a little bit. I don't know. Could be nothing, could be something. We'll see exactly how it goes. Anyway, when we come back, we are going to hit viewer mail one last time. Well, we're probably still going to do it, but the last time it'll be guaranteed, I should say. In the third segment, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. Should be really good. Anyway, stick around. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Today, we're doing some viewer mail one last time as part of our Countdown to Camp series, because on Wednesday morning, they're actually going to practice. So today, we're going to do viewer mail at least one more time. RHBs from the Discord server. Somebody told me that Simmons would beat out Howard in spring ball next year, and I about fell out of my chair. What are your thoughts on the quarterback battle and recruiting a quarterback in 24 that may not see the field until 27 or 28? All right. There's a lot to this question. This is going to take a minute. So, bear with me. Austin Simmons is an incredibly special quarterback. If you watch him spin the football and throw it, he has all kinds of skills. So do not be surprised when Austin Simmons absolutely flashes during the fall. Somebody that's out in the practice is like, this kid can throw the football. It's absolutely going to happen. The other hand, Walker Howard's an extremely talented quarterback who, if you asked me right now, I think Howard probably has the upper hand just because of time in the system going into next season. Okay. So that is my baseline for both quarterbacks. Now, I will say that this is going to be the most talented quarterback competition when it happens that Ole Miss has ever had. At least going back until Glenn Griffith and those guys roamed the halls. And I say that all the time. But Walker Howard and Austin Simmons have a chance to be a very special duel. Now, the other thing, I think Jackson Dart is going to have a heck of a year this year and go pro. That is what I think is going to happen, but that doesn't mean that is going to happen. So a lot of what we're talking about in this situation depends on what Jackson Dart does this season. Part of the reason we have Walker Howard is because Jaden Daniels decided to return to school. It was in Walker Howard's plan to be the backup to Garrett Nussmeier and be ready to go and compete with him in spring practice until he could make something happen as the season went on. If Jackson Dart decides he needs another year of seasoning, that could throw a monkey wrench into the plan. And somebody like Austin Simmons, you have a situation to where they would be a flight risk at that point. I'm not saying he will. He just hasn't used his one-time free transfer. And if you're looking at Jackson Dart coming back with Walker Howard still being there, you have a similar situation of players that might not see the field until a certain amount of time. Now, if you look at actual quarterbacks that Ole Miss are recruiting, whenever Austin Simmons came on board, Ole Miss lost Damon Williams. And I really like Damon Williams as a player. Great interview, the whole 9 yards, enjoyed it. I think Austin Simmons is a better quarterback than Damon Williams. And I think that was a trade that Lane Kiffin saw as well. So you will see maybe Trey Petty get promoted or recruited this year to be the quarterback for this class. Next year, they're going all in on Deuce Knight, who's up at Lipscomb High School now, or Lipscomb Academy in Nashville, which surprisingly enough, him at Lipscomb Academy in Nashville, Tennessee is actually a place that's he's closer to Oxford than he was at George County in Lucedale. So don't look at this necessarily as a bad thing. And now he's just 4 hours away from Oxford as opposed to like 6 or 7. He's also closer to Tennessee, obviously. Not much, honestly, because you could take 59 and go straight up that way. And then you go through Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa was probably closer to Lucedale than the other schools. And he's also being recruited by Notre Dame. He just did a visit up to South Bend. So I think that is the player they're going to go all in recruiting in 2025. In 24, the replacement for Damon Williams, I think they're going to go all in on Trey Petty. I think Trevor Jackson is somebody that we should keep an eye on out of Jones High School in Florida for the class of 24. I'm going to see him play against Osceola. Heck, probably in 6 weeks. Good player. But there's some certain Florida players that I'm going to keep an eye on of what's going on. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff there, and I just dropped a lot of knowledge there. But realize that Austin Simmons and Walker Howard, if everything goes the way that we expect them to, has a chance to be the best quarterback battle in the history of Ole Miss. And we've had quarterback battle after quarterback battle after quarterback battle. It's just part of competition in a Lane Kiffin, Pete Carroll type program. So we'll see exactly what happens there. Next question on the Discord server comes from Ken Den. Most SEC games have been sold out the last few years in the vault. Do you think we can sell out Georgia Tech in week 3? Doing it with a non-conference would be a huge step. I'm excited to be there for my first night game at the vault that won't be freezing. Remember Texas A&M in 2021. I do think they can sell it out, and it's precisely because it's a night game. It's not like Tulane, so you don't have that mid-major stigma. This is a Power 5 team coming into your house on Saturday night, the week before you're supposed to go to Alabama, a game that you completely boat race them in 2022. And this, honestly, to me, A lot of people don't realize this, and there's some history about this game. With Georgia Tech coming to Oxford, a lot is going to be done, and a decades old grudge will kind of be settled. It's weird. There was a feud between Bobby Dodd and Johnny Vaught that went back all the way into the 40s. And because of that, Georgia Tech refused to come to Mississippi, whether Starkville or Oxford, just because it was hard to get to. And Johnny Vaught took offense to this. Ole Miss was one of the best programs in college football in the 50s. Okay? It was one of the best programs. So to hear somebody else talk with such contempt against Ole Miss was difficult, and grudges were held. We all know what happened. There's a cheap shot on a Georgia Tech player. Georgia Tech got ticked off about scholarships and things like that, and eventually took their ball and went home and left the SEC. Them and Tulane left the SEC. After Georgia Tech realized they made a horrible mistake, okay, whenever they realized they made a horrible mistake, even had Georgia and Alabama going to bat for them to try and get them back into the Southeastern Conference, both Mississippi State and Ole Miss had long memories of what happened in the 40s and 50s and actively prevented Georgia Tech from going back into the SEC. So Georgia Tech remained an independent. Multiple powerful people, including Bear Bryant and Vince Dooley, tried to do that. But grudges that came up over the 40s and 50s were still at play in the 1970s, and Georgia Tech was unable to do that, and eventually they went to the ACC. I would like to see Georgia Tech come back, honestly, to the SEC. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would like to see that. But this game will be a big game in letting bygones be bygones when the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets come into Oxford, Mississippi on, September 16th or something like that, the third week of the season. So that should be pretty interesting as well. I'm pretty fired up, honestly, about that game. On it. That game, as somebody that is a history nut, that isn't specifically an Ole Miss history nut, that game means a lot to me. So Georgia Tech coming into town, that should be a sellout. Ole Miss should treat that like a big deal. And honestly, the football team should take care of business that night. So anyway, thanks you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy does a fantastic job with his podcast. Give him a listen as well. Just remember, it's Ole Miss every day. It's a lifestyle. We're doing it for you. And also, by the time you see this tomorrow, there's a good chance practice is happening. So football season's here. So thanks a lot, and hotty toddy.